The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back talking vintage sports in the zone. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and I have assembled four mavens that are going to talk about the Hall of Fame. And the voting was today. George Case is here.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, George. And David Hubler.
Good afternoon or evening, depending.
Yes, wherever you may be, as
right.
Claire Hall would say, wherever you may be. And Hal Bock. How about that?
Howdy, everyone.
How you doing, Hal?
Good.
Good. We have a man to lead us in the conversation about the Hall, and he is our resident human encyclopedia of not just sports. I'll have you know, a lot of people know know Alan Blumkin just from talking sports. Alan Blumkin has photographic memory for history, for all kinds of stuff. He's very well-rounded and the pride of the network. Alan, lead us in a conversation tonight about the Hall of Fame, if you would.
Thank you, Ralph. Hello there, everybody. They had the Hall of Fame results from the Baseball Writers Association announced about 2 hours ago, and there are only two players put in. One was Derek Jeter, who fell one vote short of unanimity, and Larry Walker, who had a pretty good career with the Expos, Rockies, and Cardinals. He was on. He received 76% of the vote. He was got in by 6 votes. And that basically was it. It was a very small class. Some of the usual suspects didn't make it. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, who seemed to be stuck at 60%. Kurt Schilling, and a few others who have been floating around near the top echelon for the last 15 years or so, 10 years or so. Gentlemen, I'd like to get each of your opinions on the election and who should have gotten in besides Jeter and Walker. So which one of you would like to start?
Well, I'll start. I'll be happy to start.
Okay.
I was really outraged at the idea that one of the baseball writers chose not to vote for Derek Jeter. I'd like to know which knucklehead did that and what his reasoning was. Derek Jeter was the best shortstop of his generation. When I was a voter, that was the criteria for me. If you were the best at your position when you played, you're a Hall of Famer. Now, how anyone could look past Derek Jeter, who had over 3,400 hits in his career? It just amazes me that somebody is out there who did not vote for this guy. And hopefully that name will be released, and he'll explain his reasoning. I'm very anxious to hear his or her reasoning about why you would leave Derek Jeter off the ballot.
Now, Hal, I want to just clarify one thing, because I'm not sure about this. His vote was not just for Jeter as the top voting. Wasn't he just not listed at all on that guy's ballot? Is that how it works?
I don't know. I haven't.
That's how it works. That's how it works. This
So
is not
he didn't
MVP
vote for Jeter
at
all.
This is not MVP voting where they have X number of points for first place.
All of the eligible players, and you check off which players you vote for. So it's not a 1 to 10. It's you have the right to vote for 10 players.
Oh,
but
I see.
If you do not vote for a player, then he's not. You didn't vote for him. It's as simple as
So
that.
in other words, Derek Jeter did not make this guy's ballot list.
That is correct.
That's correct.
Which is even more than just absurd.
I mean, it's outrageous. It's just it's embarrassing. As a former baseball writer, I'm embarrassed for the baseball writers of America that somebody left Derek Jeter off his ballot. I just find that absurd. He was more than outstanding. He was a remarkable player, and perhaps for me, the most remarkable Derek Jeter play I ever saw was the flip during the playoffs. I guess it was in 2000 or 2001.
I agree with you.
It was against the A's. Yeah, they showed that clip. They showed that clip quite often on the.
That was the best I ever saw
program,
because it's anticipating. I wanted to talk a little bit about analytics. Jeter is not a big fan of analytics. What that flip was a baseball instinct. It had nothing to do with analytics. It was being in the right place at the right time because he anticipated something that might happen, and it happened, and he reacted instantaneously and did that flip. I mean, it was probably, for me, one of the best plays I've ever seen in Major League Baseball history, period.
The same goes for me, George. And my wife, who is not particularly a baseball fan, has seen that clip, and she would say to me, "What's he doing there?" And I said the same thing. What's he doing there? As George said, it's baseball instinct. He knew, in some way, that was the place for him to be on that particular play. And it turned out to be a game saver for the Yankees. It's just a remarkable play. It's a baseball play that you just can't script, So
absolutely,
there's
no way you ever
too.
practice. There's no way you ever practice that kind of a play. That just
I gasped when I saw that. I couldn't believe it, but when it happened, way back when.
Yep.
But you guys think the whole unanimity thing has been overblown? Because if you go back, Williams, Musial, Mays, Aaron, Mantle, Frank Robinson, Spahn, Koufax, Marichal, Gibson, Palmer, Carton, none of them got received unanimous votes.
Yeah,
you know what, Alan, what you're talking about.
I said last year on this show that when Rivera made it unanimously, I said that was going to break the dam. That
I agree.
The sacrosanct law of no one ever making it unanimously was now gone. And I was convinced that this year, of course, Jeter would join Mariano Rivera as unanimous choices. Now, this guy who decided not to vote him must have voted for Mariano Rivera last year. So you wonder what the reasoning was for singling out Jeter for getting a no vote from him.
You
know what, guys? I'm just wondering if that had anything to do with the fact that Rivera made it last year 100%, and whoever this guy was, he said, to himself, well, I don't want two Yankees going in there back-to-back years 100%. I'm just wondering if that was part of his reasoning.
Yeah, that could be.
Bob Costas was on the broadcast when they announced the results, and he made what I thought was a very good point. You could make an argument that Mariano Rivera was the greatest closer in baseball history, and you can't get an argument on that. The guy had the numbers, and he was a remarkable player, a remarkable pitcher. He was the greatest closer. Okay, was Derek Jeter the greatest shortstop? Well, it's hard to say. There were a number of great shortstops in the history of baseball. You start with Honus Wagner, and so the person who did this could have been reasoning that way, that Mariano was the greatest closer, but I can't say that Jeter was the greatest shortstop. To me, that's stupid reasoning. You evaluate a player on the ballot based on his own statistics, his own performance. You can't compare Jeter with Pee Wee Reese, who's in the Hall of Fame, or you can't compare Jeter with Cal Ripken, who's in the Hall of Fame, or Barry Larkin, or Ozzie Smith, and on and on and on. They're of their own time. Jeter was of his time, and his performance in his time certainly warranted your vote for the Hall of Fame, Mr. Balloter, Mr. Voter. How could you not vote for him? I want to hear an explanation. I want to hear this voter, whoever it is, explain to me his reasoning for leaving Jeter off the ballot.
Yeah.
How when do you find out the identity, or don't you?
Good question. No.
You may or may not. My understanding is that it's up to the voters to divulge, to decide whether they want to divulge their votes. Some voters announced their votes before the announcement of the Hall of Fame. Our local voters here in New York had it in the paper over the weekend who each of them voted for on the local Long Island paper, Newsday. And by the way, all of them voted for Jeter. But it's up to the individual voter, I think, whether he wants to release his ballot. Now, if you have any guts and you decided that was the way you were going to go, defend it, own it, and explain to me why you didn't vote for Derek Jeter. I think that's a fair request, don't you?
Yeah, the first time I ever heard of a writer being identified for an idiotic vote in the 1967 American League Most Valuable Player election. There was one writer in Minnesota who voted for Cesar Tovar over Carl Yastrzemski, and basically that cost Yastrzemski the unanimous first place ballots on the MVP vote that year. And they identified, I'll never forget this name. His name was Max Nichols, and he wrote for one of the Minnesota papers, and he did that. He was roasted pretty heavily for that.
Did he defend himself
on it?
The
interesting thing is, my recollection of Max Nichols is that he was a pretty respected writer in that area. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was a Johnny-come-lately who was trying to make a name for himself. So, I mean, who knows what goes into the vote? I can't figure it out. I know what I did when I was a voter. I considered it a sacred trust. I mulled over the ballot for quite some time before I submitted it, and I would usually vote for 5 or 6 players based on my evaluation of them and their careers. I saw them play, and I decided whether I thought that they were qualified for the Hall of Fame or not.
But
what?
Hal, you didn't make a distinction whether it was about the first time eligible.
The first ballot? No. A lot of guys do. A lot of guys do that, and I think that's ridiculous. I mean, the guy's on the ballot, and he did what he did, and his numbers are his numbers. They're not going to change in the second year or the third year. If he earned the vote, you earned the vote in the first year. That's foolishness. And there are a lot of people, not a lot, I think there are some people who do that, who refuse to vote for a guy on the first ballot. Foolishness, in my opinion.
Yeah. Fortunately, that's gotten less and less over the years.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, this was Larry Walker's last year. He made it in.
Yes. The same way Ralph Kiner did. Ralph Kiner made it in on his last year.
Which I think was another fiasco. Kiner should have made it in a lot sooner than that.
Well, Kiner was
Larry Walker just made it in, right? He got 76%.
76%, yeah.
And the qualifying is what, 75%?
5, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They said he made it in by 6 votes.
Right.
But
well, I personally, I think he's deserving of it. As far as the other guys, I mean, there's controversy around, obviously around, some of them, and maybe that's what hurt him. Walker, I think, was clean. Obviously, Derek Jeter, we all seem to agree. He's the best of his era, as far as I'm concerned, as shortstop. Some people were saying about his range. Well, I mean, just as an observer, you can have range or you can have baseball smarts, and he had baseball
what the heck was I going to say? They lowered the standards when the Veterans Committee put in Harold Baines last year.
Yeah. But that sounds like a
I was waiting for that one to come up, Alan.
Okay. Yeah. That's Alan's song.
I have another question for you guys. I think we all agree about Harold Baines being kind of a fiasco. What do you think of Ted Simmons is going in? Ted Simmons got voted in by the
Veterans Committee.
The Golden Era Committee, is that what they called
Something
it?
like that.
Yeah, I don't have much of a problem with that. He was a very good catcher in an era.
I thought he was a really good catcher, but I did not think he was the best catcher of his generation because he played at a time when Johnny Bench played.
Right.
Oh yeah.
For my money, Johnny Bench, he invented the position.
But that shouldn't be the sole criterion either, because all right, you have Johnny Bench. Now, was an outstanding, exceptional catcher, but that shouldn't preclude Simmons going in because he was number 2.
No, I agree with you, but I'm not sure that he was that exceptional to catch. I thought he was a really good player. But this is the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of really good.
Unfortunately,
let me ask you something about that.
Unfortunately, that's not what it is anymore.
Yeah. Does a committee like that? I mean, what are the requirements or what are the criteria for one of those committees to elect like a Ted Simmons?
Well, here, I'll give you an example.
There's 16 and they have to get 12 votes.
Exactly.
14 get whatever it is. Yeah.
They had nearly 400 voters in this year's election, which meant to get in you needed 300 votes. That's 75%, right? 75% of, if my math is correct, you would have needed 300 votes to get in. With these committees, they have 16 voters, so you need 12.
Yeah.
That's not too many people to convince that to vote for you, you know? So I just think it's ridiculous, frankly, to have an election that requires 300 votes and at the same time have an election that requires 12 votes. I just don't get it. I don't see the...
Now, is there any distinction between a Hall of Famer like a Derek Jeter, who just was elected with 99.9%, and a Ted Simmons on the Golden Era Committee? I mean, they both go in as and can be referred to as Hall of Famers, right?
Oh, they're equal.
Right.
They're equal in the Hall of Fame. Their plaques will be there. It's all the same.
Right.
I was very disappointed when that Veterans Committee came out and Lou Whitaker was nowhere near getting in, and I thought that Alan Trammell, who is in, would have been in there without the Whitaker.
That's ironic, isn't it?
It's very ironic. Yeah.
For 20 years, and Trammell goes in, and Whitaker.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
There's no logic to it. It doesn't make sense.
Somebody posted earlier today if they were going to put Gil Hodges in, and I said I correct them and see that Gil Hodges is not on the writers' ballot anymore. He's gone to the Veterans Committee that's going to meet in the fall. And
he missed 1 year by I think 2 votes.'s been on these committees for years.
Yeah.
He missed by I think 2 votes 1 year, and then the next year he only got 2 votes. Well, how did that happen? You know?
Yeah.
I really hope
he was no longer any good.
I really would put like to see Minnie Minoso get in, but you know.
Well, now let me ask you this, guys, because I'm confused sometimes. If the Veterans Committee, as an example, or the Golden Era Committee, or whatever, they elect a person, a ball player, and then they have to wait a certain amount of time before they vote again?
No, it's different committees.
No, it's a one-time meeting. We meet.
It's a different committee.
For a couple hours, and we vote, and you're either in or you're not, and that's it. It's the side door to the Hall of Fame. It's the door to the Hall of Fame.
Another one I didn't agree with that they did several years ago is put Joe Gordon in. You know. You look at his numbers, and they're not all that, all that great, and the war people like him because he was good defensively.
One of the interesting ones is Bill Mazeroski.
Mazeroski
got in on the basis of the home run that won the 1960 World Series.
He got in because he was the best fielding second baseman of his era.
He was a good fielder, very good fielder.
He was the best fielding second baseman of his era by a lot.
But there are other players who are good defenders who are not in.
Why are you putting to name two, Ozzie Smith and Luis Aparicio, were not exactly Babe Ruths with the bat. They hit 260.
They were sensational players. Both of them were sensational players.
And Brooks Robinson
was before we're through, we'll see Vizquel get in because he was a terrific player.
I couldn't believe Vizquel was already retired for 5 years when I saw his name on the list. Has he been out of baseball 5 years already?
Yeah.
He seemed like he played forever.
Yeah, his problem is visibility. A lot of people have no idea who he is. Yeah.
How do you mean visibility? Because he played in Cleveland?
Because he didn't play for a team on either coast, and he was under the radar an awful lot. Yeah.
I don't know. He got rave reviews wherever he played. So
he was a terrific player.
Yeah, I would have voted for him, sure. Yeah.
Now I'll touch you off the debate of the day. What do you guys think about Bonds and Clemens? They both now have 2 more years on the ballot.
I think basically that they're not going to get in next year. Maybe in the final year they'll get in, because maybe the writers are going to say the longer and longer it is, the further and further you're away from the steroids. And I think that a lot of writers may feel that they've been punished enough. Because now you have a Hall of Fame without the all-time hit king. Pitcher won 7 Cy Young Awards and 7 ERA titles. Somebody who has the all-time record for home runs. Somebody who has 7 MVP awards. They're not in it going to the Hall of Fame.
Let me ask you this. Pete Rose had 4,000 hits, over 4,000 hits, more hits than anybody in the history of the game. He was barred for life because he violated one of the sacred rules of the game, which is you don't bet on baseball, right? Now, he did not. He bet on baseball. What happened with the Astros, with the sign stealing? What happened with Clemens and Bonds using steroids? They cheated baseball to their advantage to win games. Pete Rose didn't do that, and yet Pete Rose is barred for life. Well, why shouldn't these guys be barred for life? They cheated the game.
No, Pete Rose, he stonewalled for so many years.
Well, that's
true.
That
hurt him.
That was a bad thing for him to do.
Yeah, if he did a mea culpa, they probably would say 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is. Yeah, and eased up on him, but he was denying this constantly, and whoever the commissioner was didn't want to be the one responsible for making Rose eligible. Now, there's also talk in the light of the Astros scandal to make Shoeless Joe Jackson eligible.
Shoeless Joe Jackson was a victim of circumstances. I mean,
yes.
he was no more involved in that. He was in the room, we know that, when the plot was hatched, but he was just, a simpleton. He was illiterate. He couldn't write his name, and he was just dragged in by just trying to support his teammates. He had the best average in that World Series, the best batting average in that World Series. So how was he fixing games? But the commissioner was with a broad brush,
Yeah.
Now he was banned. Shoeless Joe was banned by Judge Landis, right?
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now I'm just throwing this out. Theoretically, the ban could be lifted if Manfred says, "Hey, you know what? Let's bygone be bygone. That was 100 years ago. I'm going to remove that stain from Joe Jackson, and he's eligible for the Hall of Fame. Now, what happens with that? I mean,
well, they could put him on the ballot.
I don't know. I'm throwing it out because it seems to me that could be a possibility with all this craziness that's going on with the Astros and the Red Sox and the Mets and these guys being implicated, and now they're talking about Alluvi, maybe he wearing a wire. Who the hell knows? I mean, it's nuts. I'm with you on the integrity of the game. I mean, to me, the integrity of baseball is at stake here.
One of the things that I brought up when I did the podcast with David Nemitz last Friday, Major League Baseball, with the Astros scandal, is doing their damnedest to limit it to non-playing personnel. No active players, because they don't want to start up at the union.
Right.
Yeah, but the 25 players on the roster were all involved. They all knew, and they all participated. I don't know.
What are they going to do? They're going to take.
I don't know.
What are they going to do? They're going to take back the World Series money that they got. Somebody suggested that. That's insane. They're never going to get.
I got news for you guys. You know what's more important to the current players, this generation of players, than the money? Because the salaries are outrageous, and we all know that. What's more important is the ring. Take back the rings.
Never going to happen.
No, I know it's not going to happen, but that would hurt them. That would hurt the players.
What do you think would have happened if there was a union, players' union, when the Black Sox scandal broke? You think any of these guys outside of Gandil and outside of Gandil and Risberg? Outside of Gandil and Risberg, the rest of them would have been able to play.
But they were found not guilty. So I mean, they would have a very good argument. But in those days, Judge Landis was hired to clean up the game, and he threw people out left and right for the most minor indiscretions. If you held out, Dickie Kerr, the pitcher, Dickie Kerr for the White Sox, won 2 games in the 1919 World Series, and he had the temerity to hold out for a better contract. And Landis says, you're suspended for life. You're out of the game. Well, wait a minute. In those days, I guess they could do that. And they restored him several years later. And the funny story, it's in my book, the story about Dickie Kerr was he never won another major league game. And he went into coaching. He became a coach in the Cardinals system. And he was in the minor league system someplace in Florida. And they had a left-handed pitcher who fell fielding a bunt, hurt his shoulder or his elbow. And in those days, they didn't have the sports medicine that they have today with Tommy John surgery and all those things. So they looked at him and they said, you can't pitch anymore with this elbow. And he said, well, that's it for me. I'm going home. And Dickie Kerr, who was the manager or the coach, he said, you're a pretty good hitter. Why don't we try you in the outfield? Stan Musial got 3,600 hits after that and is in the Hall of Fame. So it's a very funny story that's in my book, and there are stories like that all over my book. But
even he didn't get it unanimously.
No, he didn't.
Well, no one did until
nobody did.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Which is
in my mind, there are a number of people in the Hall of Fame who deserve to be unanimous. The best player I ever saw was Willie Mays. Hank Aaron hit 755 home runs under very difficult circumstances. Bob Gibson, if I needed to win one game, Bob Gibson was going to be my pitcher. And if it wasn't Bob Gibson, if I needed a left-hander, it would have been Sandy Koufax. None of these guys was unanimous. And to my mind, how do you not vote for people like that? I mean, Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, Right. I don't know.
I'm going to ask you something about that. You're retired, and you were no longer a Hall of Fame voter. How does that work? In other words, some of these guys that are they up? Some guys say, okay, I've been a writer for 25 years. I've been on the Hall of Fame, whatever it is. I mean, is there a time limit to these voters?
Here's what happened, George. when you became a Hall of Fame voter after 10 years in the Baseball Writers Association.
Right.
So after 10 years, I got a ballot, and I started to get a ballot every year, and I voted for about 40 years. Even though you think I'm 29, I'm not. So I had a ballot for about
39,
40 years.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the board of directors at the Hall of Fame wanted to make the electorate younger because I think they felt that the older voters, like myself, were more strict in terms of their evaluations. For example, I would never vote for a steroid guy, Bonds, Clemens, Sammy Sosa, and on and on.
Right.
So the board of directors wanted to make the electorate younger, perhaps to give the steroid population a better shot. So what they did was announced that a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that people who were retired were no longer eligible to vote. You had to be an active writer. And my answer to that is, as a retiree, I have more time on my hands to watch games than people who are still working. And I'm sure I watch more games in a given season than many members of the board of directors who took my ballot away. And they took away about 100 ballots. And that's their decision. It's their Hall of Fame, not mine.
Was that protested by the writers at all?
No,
the decision?
The writers had nothing to say about it. They determine who votes. The board of directors says, here's who's going to vote. And the writers just followed through. So here I am, out on a limb.
Now, is that Hal? Is that the board of directors of the Hall of Fame?
That's correct. Yes, the board of directors of the Hall of Fame.
Okay, that has nothing to do then with the commissioner's office or anything to do with Major League Baseball. It's
technically
strictly
the Hall of Fame. Technically, the Hall of Fame is not affiliated with Major League Baseball.
Right.
But we all know that they're in bed together. I mean, that's obvious,
Right.
And they should be, But based on the business profile, the Hall of Fame is independent of baseball.
Right. Yeah, they were the Hall of Fame originally, I guess, was founded by the Clark family.
Yes.
And with that whole crazy thing about, finding a baseball in the barn or whatever it is in Cooperstown, and that was the justification for the Hall of Fame being located in Cooperstown, which, is a huge myth as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to get into that, but that is part of the mythology of baseball, where it came from and why it's in Cooperstown, because somebody, found this old beat-up baseball and then said, oh, yeah, Abner Doubleday, who wasn't even around there, he was fighting the Civil War or something. All of a sudden, he's the great founder of inventor of the game of baseball.
Well, they had a commission back in the 1800s to determine the origins of baseball, and the commission considered all kinds of things, and they came up with Abner Doubleday. And Branch Rickey, who was around at that time, Branch Rickey said the only thing Abner Doubleday ever started was the Civil War, because he was at Fort Sumter.
Now, that was the doing of Albert Spaulding, who at that time wanted to create the myth that baseball was uniquely American and didn't evolve from the British game of rounders.
Rounders,
yeah.
Right. Which was played most
of
So then, with all this stuff, and I remember because when my dad was playing, all the teams in '39 had, they all wore that centennial baseball patch, 1839, 1939. But in reality, in that first couple classes, 36, 37, 38, or whatever it was, the first inaugural class when they opened the Hall of Fame was in '39. And that was the so-called, legends that we all talk about, Ruth and Connie Mack and, Mathewson and all those guys, right? So now we are in 2020, and now we're talking about, guys that are being elected to the Hall of Fame, but none of the original class, were they elected by by a committee, sports writers or whatever, because none of them were unanimous. Who picked them?
None of them were unanimous. I think it was a committee of sports writers. I believe it was. I'm not sure.
Right.
But, I mean, Babe Ruth wasn't unanimous. I'm doing a project right now on Babe Ruth, and some of the things that he did in his career and some of the numbers that he put up.
They're mind-blowing.
I mean, they are. That's exactly the word for it. And he wasn't unanimous. So, I mean, who could be unanimous if not Babe Ruth?
Right.
Or if not
I think Cobb got more votes than Ruth.
Cobb is another one. There's another example.
And but basically, somebody, when they put Selig in a couple of years ago, there was a lot of rantings and how could they? And so I put down. I said, as far as commissioners are concerned, they lowered the criteria when they put in Bowie Kuhn.
Well, I think Bowie was a better commissioner than Selig.
So did Jim Bouton.
Well,
Yeah.
But I think that Bowie was there when the game grew from it was staggering when Bowie became the commissioner in '69, and when he left, the game was flourishing. So you got to give him some credit.
I think that former Yale president would have been a great president.
That's Giamatti.
Giamatti.
Bart Giamatti, had he not died. So
Well, he smoked 5 packs a day. Whatever.
That may or may not have been.
Game, that's for sure.
But
his health was horrible. I mean, he was a brilliant mind, but health-wise, he was in terrible shape because, like you're talking about the cigarette smoking. I mean, that's what he did.
Right. But he came into that game.
He was a terrific.
He was
a terrific commissioner. And I guess had the support. But then I think that who followed him, was it Fay Vincent?
Yes, Fay Vincent. Yeah.
And Fay Vincent ran afoul of the owners, I guess, and the owners.
Yeah, because he tried to make a few decisions that the owners were not very happy about.
Right.
And they serve as at the bequest of the owners. I mean, if the owners don't want somebody, they have ways to. That's the way they got rid of Chandler.
Yeah,
Fay Vincent was way back when. But the dumbest one in the Hall of Fame is Morgan Bulkley, who was a senator and a governor for Connecticut, who was a figurehead, president of the of the National League in 1876. That was it. William Hobart, who founded the National League, took over in 1877. It took them over 100 years to put him in. But Morgan Bulkley has absolutely no business having a plaque there. But we can get into that forever, who belongs and who doesn't belong.
Fay Vincent was the Gerald Ford of MLB commissioners. His name just sort of disappears.
And then they had the guy from the Olympics.
Peter Ueberroth.
Ueberroth had been the with the U.S. Olympic Committee or International Olympic Committee, whatever it was. I mean, that was his background, and he also was a person who was somewhat familiar with baseball because he had been a baseball guy. But Giamatti was a baseball fan. I'm not sure about Fay Vincent. I really don't know, but Vincent was only there. What was it, David? You said about the Gerald Ford. He took over from Giamatti, and then 2 years later he was voted out.
Yeah, he He had a couple of books on interviews with old ball players. He was a fan. Right. But the ultimate commissioner.
Not the worst thing in the world, right?
I don't know if you guys remember this. I'm throwing a name out I haven't mentioned in 30 years. William Eckert.
Oh, yes, of course.
The unknown soldier.
Right.
Great Larry Fox said they've elected the unknown soldier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we all overlooked his name. That's right.
Yeah.
Alan.
Yes. Yes. So quickly we forget.
Well, basically, it's like that in all sports. With all the problems the NFL has had with teams with whatever, Goodell is still a commissioner there because he makes them a fortune.
Right.
And that's
Who
the whole criteria.
Who remembers Maurice Podoloff?
He started the NBA. He was the first commissioner in the NBA.
Yes, he was.
That little guy.
We've just lost David Stern.
Yeah.
My old Rutgers classmate, David Stern. Yeah, David died not too long ago. He had a stroke or something, but he he brought the NBA, made him into a multi-billion-dollar organization, and
they're all wearing black patches.
The growth.
They're all wearing black patches on their uniforms.
Are they
in the NBA? Because of him.
Right. Well, I knew David. I knew David Stern, and I don't know whether I mentioned this before, but I knew David as an undergraduate from being on campus with him, and then I was at an NBA All-Star game right after he was named commissioner, and we were at a cocktail party, and he came up to me and said, "George," he said, "I guess you're sort of surprised." And I said, "David, I certainly am," because David was a brilliant student, but he had absolutely no athletic background whatsoever. He just happened to be the right guy at the right time. I think he was in Larry O'Brien. Larry O'Brien, who worked for the Kennedys, I think, was the postmaster general or something, but David Stern worked for Larry O'Brien. Larry O'Brien resigned, and then Stern was was given the job. So I mean, David did extremely well. He was known as one of the most powerful people in sports, and yet as an undergraduate at Rutgers, he was known as a student. He had nothing to do with athletics whatsoever.
Yeah, well, he handpicked his successor with Adam Silver, who unfortunately looks like a walking ad for dead. But
life takes some strange turns, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, and it's I wanted to congratulate you because Rutgers is ranked.
Yeah, they are. They're all excited. They're all excited about their basketball team,
yeah.
And now they've got a new. They brought back Greg Schiano in football, who had led them to some of their best years, and now the basketball program is doing great. So.
You got a new university president was voted in today.
Yeah, they do. They brought in, from my understanding, he's the first black president.
Yes.
He had been the provost at Northwestern. I think he'd been dean of students at Yale. So academically, he was very, very sound. And on the other hand, the Rutgers alumni base is pretty excited because he had also played football at Stanford. So he's got a sports background as well.
Cory Booker.
Yeah, I had heard, David. Hal, I heard that this morning. I have no idea, but apparently I heard the two names were put together that they were teammates.
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Hopefully he'll do better than Booker did.
Yeah.
In the presidential campaign.
Okay, gentlemen, this has been a terrific podcast, and I want to thank all of you for participating and giving forth of your vast knowledge of all this. Hal, you were terrific.
Again next week.
Hal, you were terrific with this, with your experience. Thank you. Thank everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey,
good night,
everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.